Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Drury Outdoors 100% Wild Podcast, brought to you by DeerCast. I'm Matt Drury, your host, and this week I am rolling solo. Tim is out. He had some car troubles, so he's somewhere in Illinois. I think he's thumbing a ride over to Illinois to try to pick up a van, something like that. So anyways, got a good guest today that we'll get to here in a second. Talking about a big deer, which I know everybody loves hearing big deer stories. So we'll dive into that in a minute. First, I wanted to real quick touch on a couple of things. One of the things I wanted to touch on real quick is if you're still after it, and you haven't had any luck so far this season, don't get down and out, because it can change in a minute, and it does get a little bit harder this time of year. You know, when we're thinking about the gun season come and go, and here in Missouri, it feels like it's just nonstop gun season. Once it starts, it doesn't stop. We had, if you were in a CWD county, you could still be hunting with a rifle up through the weekend. There was another youth season, a second youth season this weekend. The antlerless season's coming up this week, and I think it's like 8 or 10 days. You know, of course, we'll have primitive weapons season between Christmas and New Year's. So you're in orange a lot, and the deer don't stand much of a chance. I mean, they're shell shocked by this time of the season. So one of the things that I will say that we have going for us is the cold weather. And that's something that we didn't have really in September, October, and finally here in really the beginning of November either. So finally we have a cold stretch. If you have some sort of food source, they're going back to that heavy pattern of food to bed, bed to food. And that's about it. So don't give up. You know, things can change in an instance. If you have some corn, if it's legal where you're hunting, you can cut the corn, brush hog it. I'd recommend doing that. Standing beans, always deadly. But keep after it. Even green, like right now, I think we're in green revisited, phase 10. So, you know, if you got a good radishes and, you know, winter bulbs or something like that, like always a good possibility to catch one grazing there. So stick after it. It can happen anytime, anywhere. But it does become a little bit of a grind, especially if you haven't killed anything with your bow by this point in the season and you're back to using a bow. It's like, holy crap, man. Can't imagine trying to get one within bow range again. But kind of go back to those early season tactics of when you're hunting the food source. You hit that again here in the late season. So I just wanted to say that real quick. All right. We have a special guest with us, Mr. Mason Westerman, who killed a rough deer of 194 inches. Nicknamed him Stickers. A deer you've been after, what, 3 years? Is that right? 2-3 years?
This was the 4th year.
All right. So Mason's with us. Mason, where are you from, buddy?
I am originally from Chester, Illinois, but I live in central Illinois.
So you actually do land management, and this is kind of like living the wildlife as your full-time gig, right?
Yeah, 100%. That's what I do full-time. Manage hunting properties and go all over, helping out people, you know, kill big deer.
So I could probably take some tips from you. You could probably come over and help me out. Figure out how to be better at planting food plots. What do you do when it doesn't rain? That's what I'd like to know. With you, all the food plots you plant, like just keep planting them? Pray for rain, basically. We've had to replant quite a few this year, unfortunately, but with the long drought. But kind of go towards a couple more drought tolerant species, stuff like that, you know, when we can plant. And then when we get more rain, then we'll plant, you know, more of the winter bulbs, stuff like that. That's kind of more relying on that rain. All right. So let's get into this deer. So my nephew, Nolan Klump, you're friends with him and his group of friends. And that's how I first saw the deer, just on social media. And, we have several mutual friends. And when I guess Nolan, I was with him, maybe it was his wedding, his engagement party, which you were at that, right? Yeah, you were at his engagement party.
Yeah.
And correct. I think maybe that's where I first heard you or him mention that you were hunting a pretty big deer. So give us a backstory on this deer and what all it entails to come up to the point. Cause you had, you filmed for a show called Team Radical. Is that right?
Correct. Yep.
So you've got footage of this deer. You've been after this deer. Take us back to the beginning and the kind of the genesis of where it all started.
So, I guess it was the fall of 21. This deer was running around. I personally didn't know he was around, but the spring of 22, I actually found his sheds on a place that I can hunt. And I'm like, holy crap, like this deer, like he shows great potential. I think he had like 14 scoreable, and we were thinking he was 3 at the time.
Oof.
And so that fall, he was 4, and he was all over that farm. Had one encounter with him during bow season. Opted past him because he was 4 with such great potential. Wanted to let him go. And then he dropped his sheds at 4. I found his sheds at 4. And then he actually moved onto a neighboring property and got permission to lease that property, was hunting him on that property, and then didn't get the deal done there, and then found his sheds again on that property, and then unfortunately lost permission to hunt on that lease that I had because the word got out that I was hunting him. And then
it's funny how that works.
Yeah. And then I was actually able to lease the neighbor property next to it. It was only a small little piece. It was only 40 acres, and I knew he wasn't living there, but I knew he frequented it because I found his sheds there. So that's kind of how it came about to hunting this deer over the 4 years.
So going into 24, is he 6 or 7? He's 7, right?
We think he's 6.
6. Okay.
Is the guess. Not for sure. He could have been 7. But
so you're going into 2024, and obviously, like, all plans are for this deer, I assume, right?
Yeah. Pretty much all the cards are on this deer. I have a couple other farms, but no deer of this caliber. Mature deer, but nothing, quite this large. And so it being a 40-acre small track, we absolutely loaded it with cell cameras just to try to figure out, where this deer was, where he was going, when he was coming, and got permission on a piece to the south of it just to hang cameras and stuff like that. So
on the permission piece to the south, it was just to hang the cameras, but not to hunt. So just to get intel.
So that's what it started out as, was to, it was just to hang cameras just to see if he was around, and he showed up, and I was able to work out a deal just getting permission. So this piece to the south is basically only a fence row, and there's only a handful of trees in it. And I hung a stand. Yeah, I got permission to hunt, and I could only hang a stand in one tree. There's only one tree to hang a stand. And so I hung a stand. I only hunted it a handful of times, but I knew he was living in the block of timber where I was leasing, and then to the north where I had leased prior. So it was kind of a good puzzle piece. If I knew he disappeared off mine, did he go south or did he go north? Kind of deal. So it was a good, nice little puzzle piece.
So you're kind of trying to piece together, it's a lot of small acreage. You're trying to piece together and get permission here, get permission there. You had permission, you lost permission. So you get permission on a piece next to that piece. So you're just kind of jumping around here and building the history with the deer. Did he kind of stick to the same pattern each of the years? Because if you started with 21, so you had a good 2 or 3 years of pattern in history, right?
Yeah. So, what's kind of crazy is from when he was 3 and 4, he moved 1.5 miles to where he was at 4 or at 5 and 6. So he kept jumping properties. He was basically steady going east is what he ended up doing. I don't know why, if it was hunting pressure or what it was. But he found his little core area on, that 40 acres, and that's kind of where I guess he liked to stay. But he moved 1.5 miles from where he was 3 to where he was 6.
Huh. So okay, he's in this little 40-acre core area, and I mean, are you getting daylight photos of this deer, or is it just mostly nighttime, or like what's his pattern? Is he moving? Is he frequent? Is he moving where is he huntable?
Yeah. So, actually, being on this 40-acre piece was the first time I've ever gotten velvet pictures of him. And from the years prior, or from last year, I actually had an opportunity at him, and I shot him in the shoulder because he was quartering to me, and he ended up surviving. And over the summer, he gained a huge pus pocket on his shoulder where I shot him, and so I had him in velvet very, very frequently, like almost every other day. I had him in velvet, so I knew he was feeding close. There were some cornfields, there was alfalfa, things like that, so I knew he was pretty close. And then I got pictures of him shedding velvet, and then like during the process of shedding velvet, and then he disappeared for probably 2 to 3 weeks. And I was like, okay, he probably went north. He probably went back to his original home range last year. And then, so be it, after that time, boom, he's back. And he wasn't super frequent, but I would get him on at least 1 to 2 cameras every other day again. So before I killed him, he only daylighted twice in the month of October 3rd and October 18th. Those were the only 2 days he daylighted on camera. And the encounters that I had with him leading up to killing him, he was never on camera. I had 4 encounters with him, and he wasn't on any cell cameras. Like, he avoided all of them. I don't know how he did it, but he did, because I was running 7 cell cameras on 40 acres.
It's funny how good they are at avoiding the camera.
Yeah, I mean, this deer's taught me a lot. He taught me that just because they're not on camera doesn't mean they're not there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I time and stand and eyes on the property. It's you just can't replace that. I know a lot of times you can do some damage, but if you have good access in and you have good wind, and if you're not really messing things up going in and out, like, really nothing replaces MRI from your own visual, right? From your own being in stand time and figuring out what deer move, how they move. Like, that's the biggest thing. I always think, like, man, this season is taking me forever to kill a deer, but it's like, well, it's a brand new property and we have to figure out how the deer move. It's one thing to hang a camera, but it's another thing to see if they actually move in front of it or if they move 10 yards behind it, and that's where you can kind of you just got to be there sometimes.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I envisioned going into this property, not knowing it, was it had one major pinch point, but I didn't want to go in the timber at all. I just wanted to hunt the edges, basically just to see how they were moving and just to lay eyes on the deer. And doing observation sits is ultimately how I killed this deer. It wasn't based off cameras at all. It was definitely seeing him, seeing where he's going, and then, judging his movements off of the deer, the days prior. What they all did, and kind of expecting him to mimic those same patterns.
So you had 4 or 5 encounters with him. What's happening in those encounters? Is it that he's too far? He's chasing a deer? What's going on here with these encounters?
So the second time he daylighted was the 18th of October. That was a Friday. I went in the next day to go hunt him. Never did see him, but walking out, I learned something really valuable. It was when I was walking out, there's actually a bachelor group of bucks, and they were all in this low-lying area where there's some alfalfa planted, and they were just sitting there feeding, and I realized that my access was not good for that particular stand. So I decided to ditch that stand and to put up a new set overlooking that low-lying area to where I could get a better observation and seeing where all these deer were coming out. So the next weekend was the 26th. I hung a set and then hunted it the next day and had an encounter with a 4-year-old that I know. Off to pass him because I knew the other one was there. And then that evening, I actually hadn't, or no, I'm trying to remember here. So I hunted it the next morning. That's what it was. I had my first encounter with him. He was extremely far away. He was on the neighbor to the north where he was the year prior. I could see him. He was like 400 or 500 yards away, but I could tell by his frame that it was definitely him.
Sure.
And then that evening, I had that 4-year-old come in, let him walk, and then made a game plan for the next week. Luckily, with my job and my awesome bosses, they knew I was hunting this deer and the weather was right. So they're like, hey, we're going to work a couple days and then take the rest of the week off. We're all going to go hunt. Let's go, try to get some deer on the ground.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, that was super, super nice. And so that next week I hunted, it was, I believe, would have been Thursday. No, I don't remember the exact date, but my next encounter was an evening, was in that new set that I hung, and he was out probably 150 yards feeding. He was going straight to cut corn. And if the neighbor was in their blind, they would have definitely shot him because they have their blind like 20, 30 yards off the line. Yeah. And he walked straight past it, like going to cut corn. And I'm like, well, that's a blessing for me, but not for him. Yeah, no doubt. And as soon as he crested the hill and went over the hill, I had probably about a half hour of shooting light left. But I was like, I don't want him to come back to bed and then me be caught with my pants down trying to get down out of my stand and leaving and him see me. So as soon as he was out of my sight, I got down and I left. And I'm very glad I did because I have a camera on a road where I access, and I walk out, and then about an hour later, he's walking out right behind me. So he would have been in front. He would have been in front of you or running into you if you would have waited till it got dark. Yes. By the time I got down and walked to where that camera was, it would have been right at that line of me or him being on top of each other. Yeah. And, I would have spooked him. So that next day, I knew where he had went. He went back to the neighbor to the north. So he was always going to the north when I had seen him. So I hunted to the south because I had the wrong wind. I had a north wind. Oh, no, it was a south wind. No. Yeah, it was a north wind. So I hunted to the south, thinking he's going to come off a different neighbor and then come onto this piece, or just to do an observation sit was mainly what it was. Cause planning on going to a different stand, but I got there and it said there was like a 4 or 5 mile an hour north wind, and it was not, there was like no wind. It was dead silent. So I hunted the stand that was further off to the south, let my thermals, do their thing, pull it down the hill, and had an encounter with the deer I called the split 2-buck. He was that 4-year-old that I passed, and had him at 25 yards and ended up passing him. He was bumping a doe, and good thing I did, because about probably 10 minutes later, I look off to my right, and then there's Stickers standing about 150 yards again with a doe. And I'm like, oh crap. Like, he's out there tending her. There's another smaller buck out in the field, and he goes and kind of bumps him off, and they're kind of messing around for a little bit, and I'm filming this, and they all go back into the timber to the north, which is my lease. And I'm like, okay, sweet. Like, I know where he's at. Yeah. I'm hoping he beds right in that small block of timber. Game on. And then I knew the wind was going to switch to a south midday. So I went and got on the north side of him. And I think it was either switched to a south or it was like a northeast. It was something like that. It was favorable for him and for me at the same time. I think it was a northeast is what it was. So it was very marginal, but knowing where he was and where he was probably going to come from, I knew I could pull it off, because all these deer were coming out of this timber. They were feeding in alfalfa, and then they were going to cut corn. So that's kind of what all the deer were doing at this time, being, late October. We're kind of getting ramped up. They're kind of focused on food more or less. So I go hunt that stand in the evening, and I see an absolute buttload of deer. As soon as I got my stand at 2:00, this was like right before time change. So it was, 1:00 now, and, or be 3:00. I don't know. Anyway.
No one knows.
Yeah. But I got on my stand probably 2:00. And as soon as I got in my stand, there was already deer coming out. There was a group of like 12 does came out, and then a 2-year-old 8-pointer came out and was running them around. They scattered, and just deer were piling out like crazy. And I had these 2 spikes off to my right, and I have one shooting lane that way. And I know it's 30 yards. Like, it's more of a heads up kind of shooting lane, like for them to come out to the alfalfa. And I look at them, they're kind of messing around, sparring, doing their thing. And there's, I think, 1 or 2 does out in the field left that 2-year-old didn't spook off. And then I'm kind of watching them. And then I look back to my right, and he's just standing there 30 yards. Oh. And I'm freaking out. Like, it's kind of to my weak side. So I'm trying to flip on cameras, turn on my GoPro, turn on my main DSLR camera, trying to get it aimed at him, grab my bow, all that kind of thing. And he's basically head on at me, but he doesn't know I'm there. He's basically looking underneath me, like past me.
Yeah.
And freaking out, like, it's like a standoff, but he doesn't know I'm there. And then he kind of sees that doe and kind of goes to bump her, and he bumps her out into the alfalfa field and kind of bumps her around about 90 yards. And then she runs back into the woods, and then he goes back into the woods, and I'm like freaking out. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, there he is. Like, I'm trying to calm myself down, because like, this is the closest encounter I've had with them.
Yeah. Legitimate encounter.
Legitimate encounter. He's within range. And at this time, there's more than enough daylight left. So I'm like, he's probably going to come back out. And I don't know. It felt like 5 minutes, but it could have been a lot shorter. But he came right back out, and he seen that other doe, and he started like beelining straight for her. And he was kind of feeding, then he would stop, feeding, kind of stop. But as you can hear in my video, I got it posted on YouTube. There's this house that's, kind of up the hill from me. It's probably like 300-400 yards, but it sounds like everyone's right there. You can hear conversations. You can hear dogs barking. Like, you can hear a lawnmower going. Like, it's crazy that all these deer are used to this.
Yeah.
And he's coming out, he's feeding the alfalfa, and he like looks up at them, looks at her, and kind of like works his way towards her. And there's this like brown spot in the alfalfa. I was like, okay, if he gets to here, now I'm ranging it. That's my range. If he gets to there, I'm going to have my camera ready. And then that's where I'm going to shoot him. And so he actually did that. It was a little bit further than I wanted to shoot, but I knew it was my only opportunity at the time. And I didn't have to stop him, which I hate stopping deer. So if he stops on his own, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. And he stopped on his own. He was kind of looking the other direction, and I drew back and shot. Unfortunately, my shot was back. It was not a great shot by any means. But I reviewed the film and called a bunch of the buddies, and we all reviewed it. And I waited till I sat in my stand till dark, got down and left. I didn't even look at my arrow, nothing. And then I called a guy with a dog and had them come out the next day.
So, okay. So when he stops, he's feeding, he stops. How far out was he how far out was the brown spot?
It was right at 51 yards.
Okay. So he's at 50 yards, quartering away or broadside or what?
He's straight broadside.
Okay.
Yep.
So take the shot a little bit, what I assume back, or was it low?
It was back and it was low.
Yeah. So what are you looking at? Guts or what do you think you hit?
It was 100% guts. And I actually hit low enough to where I actually cut his whole belly open as well.
Yeah. So that could go either way. I mean, they could die quickly from, if all their insides are kind of coming out, or that could be a 24 to 36 hour, right, time of death. So when you guys review the footage, what's the game plan? I know you went and you brought in a dog, but how long did you guys wait to go in and start tracking?
So we ended up waiting 25 hours by the time we started picking up a track.
Yeah. Yeah, I say that I've seen that a few times with different shots from the team or whatever, where we've seen different kills where it could be, 24 hours and we had one happen this season that was a little bit further up than what you were talking about. But again, sliced the underbelly or the undercarriage, and it was, dead within probably 6. So it can go either way there, but the further back on the body that you are, it's probably a longer process than if you're, right under the heart or something like that, where arteries could be kind of coming in and out of that, heart cavity.
Right. Right. And, am I back?
Yep. There you are.
Okay. So I talked to the guy with the dog and I sent him the film as well. And, this part wasn't on film, but I could see it. He ran off and was standing just inside the woods, and I could see his guts and stuff hanging out of the bottom of him.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, which made me feel terrible because obviously as hunters, we do not want to, we don't want the animal to suffer at all. And, he's just standing there and he kind of tries to tend to it, and he's in shock 100%.
Yeah.
And I knew he was going to go to bed fairly shortly after he went into the woods. So I knew about where he was at. I probably didn't need to call a dog, but waiting that time, but I did want to anyway. It kind of forced me to not go in there earlier.
Sure. And yeah, because you got to wait on them to show up and all that good stuff. And
he drove 2.5 hours to come track for me, which was awesome.
Yeah, and the positive part about the hit, if there is any positive, is from there with a dog. I mean, that should be pretty relatively easier track job for a dog if it's a gut, hit from the smell in general, I would think.
Yeah. As soon as we got there with the dog found the arrow instantly, and then it was just trying to go. Like it was ready. And the dog found it in 20 minutes.
It's incredible. How far did the deer go?
From where I shot him to where we found him was only 300 yards.
Yeah. But I'm sure was there any kind of blood or anything really other than maybe at the hit?
There was no blood at the hit, actually.
Okay.
The only blood was, we found he had like 8 to 10 beds within like a 30-yard radius. And that was the only blood. And then we found him, just on the other side of the ridge, and he was absolutely torn apart by coyotes and bobcats.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They got to him pretty quickly.
Yeah. That sucks. And that's the tough part. I mean, you don't hear people talk about it much, as far as in media, but it's a reality that happens quite a bit each deer season, whether people like to admit it or not. I think it's like some sort of macho, like, oh, you may get crap for it from, especially in the online world, like, oh, you shouldn't have shot there. You should have done this or that. But it happens to a lot of people every season. And, it's unfortunate, and you're not proud of it. You don't want that to happen. You wish every shot was a 10 ring or 12 ring or whatever, and they die 50, 60, 70 yards. It doesn't happen all the time, especially in archery. So it kind of is what it is. It's nice to be able to have things like, deer dogs, or, the states like Missouri where drone recovery is legal to do. I know Iowa, it's not. I don't know. Is Illinois, can you do drone recovery? Probably not.
I don't think so.
Yeah. So, I know you can in Missouri though. So anyways, it's nice to be able to have these things at your disposal, because in an instance like that, okay, yes, the meat, you weren't able to recover any of the meat. It sucks. You wish it didn't happen, but there's plenty of critters that benefited from it. So it's kind of circle of life in that regard. But at the end of the day, you were able to find the animal, which is also, it's great to be able to have the closure there, and something that, dating back to 2021, you've been searching for and plotting and planning, and you finally get your opportunity, and it's nice to be able to have the closure, and it happens. You know what I mean? It's not ideal, but it happens. It's happened, to all of us. And if it hadn't happened to somebody, which you always see, that's like, oh, I've hunted 20 years and that's never happened to me. It's like, okay, cool. Well, you're one of the lucky ones, because it does over anybody's archery career. Sooner or later, some kind of mishap seems to happen. Right. So I'm glad that you were able to recover them.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was a huge learning thing for me as well, because I always try to go through my pre-shot, checklist, I like to call it. And I skipped over one valuable point, and it was my grip. I was gripping my bow like way too hard, and I torqued my bow, and it's why it shot to the right. I 100%. I knew it as soon as I shot. Like, yep, that's exactly what I did.
Man, nerves. You can't predict what's going to happen. Pete Shepley of PSE always said, give yourself something to do. Like, that was always almost every tip we ever did on Bow Madness was, get a coach or, in the shot sequence, give yourself something to do so you don't have buck fever. Jim Tomey always said, slow the game down. Yeah. Those are all fine and dandy until the time comes when a close to 200-inch deer is in front of you for the first time, where you actually can shoot it. You know what I mean? Like, the greats can slow the game down, but I think that's because they've had the experience of, being in that instance multiple times. When it's your first time, I assume that was your first time in front of a 200-inch deer and within bow range. I mean, all hell seems to break loose. You forget a step or two sometimes, it's the reality of it.
Especially when it's such a, 4-year buildup as well. Just the anticipation, you've waited 4 years for this, 30-second to 5-minute, time in your life.
And, you think about it, all the things you've probably sat there in a stand 1,000 times and thought about how it would play out. Every time you're in a stand, any minute he's going to come out from over here, or he's going to be pushing a doe out from over there. And, I'm going to draw back. I'm going to stop him. I'm going to draw back. I'm going to grunt, whatever, and get the shot. It never plays out the way we think in our mind as we sit there watching, birds and squirrels and, does and yearlings. And here you are, you get the opportunity. It never plays out how you quite think it will.
Yeah, it never does. Luckily, I was fairly close, I'm guessing, but I would have never guessed he would have came out where he did 30 yards from me as, first seeing him. I would have never guessed that. I would have thought yards, he came out where all the other people.
At 30 yards, you don't have the shot, right? He's facing you.
Yeah, he's facing me. I had no shot. If he turned and stood there, I would have had a shot, but he turned and bumped that doe straight out into the field. So,
yeah. It's interesting. It's that, I guess, part of that fight or flight instinct that a guy has. It's kind of like, oh shit, or calm. Maybe it's a whole different part of the brain. I don't know, but it's just like, you don't know until you're in the situation how you're going to react. And even if you were calm, hell, you're self-filming, so you got to turn on all the cameras. And anybody that's never filmed, I often say it. I have the luxury of always having a camera guy with me. I don't think I would go without a camera guy because I don't think I could self-film. It's not easy. I mean, there's a lot to just trying to capture it all on camera, and it adds a whole other element to it. Like a whole other element from if you had one job to do, just kill the deer, it'd be one thing. But when you have another job of trying to capture it all on film and then kill the deer, it's just like, man, it gets complicated quick.
Yeah, especially with all the deer around, it's so hard to move as it is. So, moving a camera arm and, reaching up, a little bit higher to grab a GoPro and click it on and, grab your bow off the hanger and put your release on and, make sure your microphone's on and, all that little bit of stuff. You're like, it's pretty easy to forget something. So, I'm trying to check all that. And then the only thing I forgot was that, one little blip of, checking my grip.
But that's not easy to.
It sucks I shot him where I did, but.
The checking your grip deal, I mean, you're in the heat of the moment. That's probably one of the easiest things. I know I do it. And I know Mark went through a thing maybe 2 or 3 seasons ago where and Mark's a great shot in the heat of the moment. He always makes a shot. And he had one season where he had a tough season and he had a couple hits that weren't ideal or that he wasn't accustomed to. And he said it was all because of his grip. And so he, started putting stuff on his grip so that if he squeezed it too hard, almost like a thumbtack, if he squeezed it too hard, it would, pinch him or whatever on his hand, so he would kind of know. But he only did that after he figured out from watching the footage like what he was doing and torquing it because he was gripping too hard. And it's one of those things where when the deer comes out, that's an easy mistake to make. You're gripping too hard because it's a tense moment, right? You're tense at that moment.
Yeah, I was trying to calm myself down and all that sort of thing, and trying to think of everything else. It's nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
With especially a deer of a lifetime in front of you and then trying to film it. And then, this was my first legit year on Team Radical. So I'm trying to, I'm the new guy, so I'm trying to prove myself. And, this is one of the biggest deer I've ever chased and one of the biggest deer, we filmed on, for Team Radical, it's top 3. So, that's a huge, I'm putting all that pressure on myself, even though I shouldn't, but that's just how it is being, the new guy. Anytime
we bring a new team on, almost always, like they could have a decade of killing booners every year. And almost every time we bring a new team on, that first year, they just suck. And it's because they're putting too much pressure, or they're grinding. It's just something, their deer diet or whatever, there's always a reason. But it's funny you say that because we've seen that over and over and over again through time. It's like anytime you bring a new team on, give them 2 years to figure out what they're like, because the first year usually sucks.
Right.
So, okay, right. You recover the deer. I'm sure it was all high fives. And although, with the coyotes and everything getting to it, I'm sure that part sucked. But, I'm sure it was a weight lifted off your shoulders when you finally walked up on them.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, it was a roller coaster of emotions because it being so long of, finding his sheds and last year I was like, oh, he's dead. And then he randomly shows up 2 months later and he's alive and the highs and the lows. And then now it's like, it's all over. I'm not checking cameras for him anymore. All that kind of reality sets in. It's like, okay, this chapter is closed. And then it was just kind of surreal, with that deer, the years and everything like that.
It's kind of deflating. And I haven't killed a deer of that caliber. I mean, even just killing the couple bucks that we killed this year, like Aaron and I on the lease, it's like, man, I have a hard time wanting to go look at the cameras because I know those deer aren't there anymore. It's like that was the chase, finding them and seeing where they were at and trying to put the puzzle pieces together to see where they're going to be next. Like that's the reason we love to chase them, right? And so it's almost depressing. Deer pressing is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. It's, it's a huge chess match, and you finally won.
Yeah. Yeah.
You always want to win, but you always like the chase as well.
Well, if you think about it, you've been hunting them 3-4 years. You've lost every time except for one, and that's the reality of a hunter. We lose way more than we win. And the guys, that's what makes it so impressive. The guys that consistently kill big deer and do it with regularity, whether they got 100 acres or 1,000 or whatever, still not easy to be the one that sits behind a Boone and Crockett animal every year. Like, that's amazing to me. I can't even find one, much less be the one to kill one. You know what I mean? And I think that's what's tough when we look at social media. And we've the last few podcasts, we've interviewed, guests like yourself where they're killing deer of a lifetime. And that's what each guest has said it. It's like, this is a deer of a lifetime. And I think that's the reality that you have to, as a listener or a viewer. And it's like, man, I would love it if that was me one day. But you got to also think that's a deer of a lifetime. So your day may come, but unless you're just in the prime area, you're in the great southern Iowa area, or there's certain pockets, where consistently they're turning out big deer and you can almost stumble into one anywhere. Outside of that, it's just not a reality for a lot of people. So I think that's why people love these stories. It's like, he got his deer of a lifetime. That's awesome, man. And a story like this, it wasn't luck. I mean, you've been after him for a long time and you put all the pieces of the puzzle together to figure out his pattern, right?
Right. And it was really brought to my attention. I'm obviously extremely grateful, but it was kind of brought to light because, my dad introduced me to hunting and stuff like that. And growing up as a kid, and that's our thing. And he was standing there with me and he's like, I could have never imagined you killing deer like this. He's never killed a giant deer. He's killed a 140-inch deer. And then now we're looking at a, mid 190s deer. And we're like, holy crap. Like, he's been hunting, since the 80s, and he's never seen a deer this big, let alone killed one. And yeah. I'm 24 and I've killed, a mid 190s deer, and he's never killed one, more days than I've been alive hunting. So yeah. It definitely makes me even more grateful, because I know there's people that go their whole lives and don't even get an opportunity at a deer like this, let alone kill it. So.
Well, good for you for sticking with it, because it's not like you had, like I said, not like you had 1,000 acres and nobody else was on it and the deer was a homeboy. Like, you're grinding to get leases and losing leases and picking up new leases and permission and, like 40 acres here and, whatever it is, a tree line there, like that isn't easy. So it's, I think it's a pat on the back to you to stick with it and, a little bit of luck that someone else didn't kill him too. Obviously, like you said, if somebody would have been in that blind when he walked right past it, or that's what it takes sometimes, is a little bit of luck on your side.
100%. And it not relying on cameras too. It was the, seeing him in person and seeing where he went. That's why I like having my trail cameras on video is, they may come into a scrape, but they may leave a different direction than what you kind of expect.
Yeah.
And general direction is a lot to do with, figuring out these deer.
For sure. Well, congratulations. It's like you said, deer of a lifetime. It's an awesome story. Happy for you that you were able to wrap your tag around them.
I appreciate it.
Well, all right. So, this is the part of the show where we kind of have a few questions of the day, wildlife word, all that good stuff. You want to stick around for it, or do you need to be places more important than this?
Yeah, I'll stick around.
All right. So we got the question of the day. The question of the day is brought to you by Sportsman's Channel, the home of Winchester and Drury's Natural Born and everything red, white, and blue. Okay. Joe Paluo from the Rack Pack. He says, when hunting over food plots in open areas, do any of you use a thermal or night vision binocular to ensure all the deer have left your area before getting out of your stand or blind? Well, I can't. In Missouri, you can't. It's illegal to have a thermal I think that's the way the rules read. Like if you're actively hunting, so like the way I read it is you can't have it in your pack with you. Now, if you're on a recovery, that's a different story. So, we have them because like Leupold used to make it's called an LTO. It's like a little thermal handheld. And so we have them, but I leave mine in my truck. I know that's what the guys do. And then if we kill something and we need it, we go grab it. As far as like figuring out how to get out of your stand or blind, that's a tricky thing, and everybody's probably got their own little, theory on it and tricks of the trade of how they get out. Just last night I was hunting, over some cut corn, and it's an area where it's a huge area, so you can see forever. There are deer all over, and we waited till it got dark, but you kind of hope that they're just kind of work their way off, or they get spooked, or they move off, but sometimes they don't. And you just kind of have to, if there was a big shooter out in the field, it'd be one thing. And I guess sometimes you just don't know, especially when it gets dark. Like if something came out and you can't see it, but with just my Leupold binoculars, I try to glass the area as long as I can see. And then sometimes you got to make the call just to open the door if you're in a blind and get out, or if you're in a stand, just crawl out. And if you're in a stand, that cover of darkness, shimmying down the tree and just kind of working your way out probably helps you, unless they're downwind of you. And then I often think like, okay, they may not be able to see me or know exactly what I am, once it gets dark enough, and I can just kind of sneak out and they might bust. But if they never get your scent, they don't know what you are. I've seen them get spooked by possums and, squirrels and birds. So, I don't know. Sometimes I think we probably think about it a little too much, or obviously if you're hunting and you've got to spook the deer every single day to get out of your blind or your stand, that's probably not ideal. But, as long as a big buck's not out there, or they're not downwind of you, I don't know. I just kind of sometimes just get out and go. So I don't know. What do you do, Mason?
If I'm seeing, like you said, if it's the deer you're after, my situation, I seen him and he worked, opposite direction. So I just got down and left.
Yeah.
Before he got remotely close to me. But if there's a few does out there and stuff like that, like I've seen them spook each other. One might sneeze and the other might think it's a snort, and then they all scatter and they don't know what happened. Yeah. So I kind of wait till it's dark and then make sure my access is always good, because I won't hang a stand unless my access is good. And I'll just wait till it's dark and then use a wood line or something like that as a backdrop. Don't skyline myself, that sort of thing, and just kind of slip out of there slow. Yeah. And, we also like to use e-bikes as well. So e-bikes are a huge thing, to get out quickly and quietly. E-bikes, and I didn't have a chance or an opportunity to really use mine this year. Last year, I used it a ton, and it is amazing to me what you can get away with and how quickly you can get in and out of your spots. And I would recommend them if you can afford them, or, want to go down that path, or if you can use them where you're hunting. I would definitely recommend them, because it is a game changer as far as getting in and out quickly. And, you're spot on there. So some guys will, if you're stuck in a blind and say your deer is out there, if you have your wife or your buddy or somebody in the area, or if you're hunting at home or whatever, that can like drive a side by side or a vehicle or something and like push everything off the field. That's another, tactic that I've seen guys use. You'll see it on camera where you get out, and then like last night we had to spook the field. There's probably 14 or 15 deer on the field, all within a few hundred yards, and we had to spook them to get off finally. And hell, they were back on camera, on the corn within a half hour. So, especially this time of year, they are so spooky anyways, that like you said, I don't even know if half the deer know what's going on. One might have spooked and then the whole field cleared, so I don't know. It's one thing if your deer's on the field, it's that you're after. It's another thing if it's just a bunch of other deer. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah, and I've done the exact same thing that you said with calling a buddy or something like that, and drive a truck or a side by side or a tractor. They're used to tractors, so
yeah,
you can drive a tractor out there, and deer are used to that, and they'll spook off, run inside the woods, and then they'll come right back out 30 minutes later, like you said.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so the next thing we got is the wildlife word. Today's wildlife word is brought to you by Nose Jammer. Wrong wind, jam 'em. How do you use anything like that? A nose jammer?
I 100% use nose jammer.
Yeah, same. I mean, I've never, in the last 5 years, I don't know that I've ever not used it. I usually just spray them at the bottom of my boots. If I'm hunting in a tree stand and I'm on a marginal wind, I'll spray the tree, above me. But for the most part, it's typically just spraying my boots, or if it's like the rut and I've been hunting for 4 or 5 days and don't have access to wash my clothes, things are starting to get a little smelly. Sometimes you just spray and walk through like it's cologne. But I don't know. It's legit. I'm all in on nose jammer. All right. So the question, or the wildlife word, is what are hair-like cellular projections in the? Okay, who wrote this? Jim, is this you? I'm not even going to be able to. This is where I missed Tim. I can't even pronounce the word. No. Is this mucous membrane? Yes. Okay. Here we go. All right. So what are the hair-like cellular projections in the mucous membrane of a deer's nose that capture scent molecules? Is it A, cilia, B, glands, C, olfactory epithelium, or D, holy crap, maxilloturbinate? Maxilloturbinate. I don't know, man. This is a tough one. I'm going to go with olfactory epithelium, C. What do you go with? If you could even understand what I was saying there, A, B, C, or D.
That's kind of where my gut was leaning.
Anything with a deer's nose. It's A. All right, I'm wrong. It's cilia. A. Okay, so the question was, what are the hair-like cellular projections in the mucous membrane of a deer's nose that capture scent molecules? Cilia. C or A, cilia. It's C-I-L-I-A-Y. No. C-I-L-I-A. Well, you know what? Here's where we missed Tim. I don't say that often. All right, we're going to go to some shout outs. We got a shout out from Miles Morrow. He says, I love the podcast. You guys don't get enough credit for it. Yeah, the old school hunters probably prefer watching the videos, but us new school hunters, wow, the information you can get out of just one podcast is amazing. You guys keep up the great work. Well, thank you, Miles. And I don't know if you got a lot of info out of this one, especially the wildlife word. I butchered 4 or 5 parts of that. All right. And then we got the rack pack. Are you in the rack pack, Mason?
Unfortunately, I'm not.
You son of a bitch. All right. So the Rack Pack is it's a Facebook group. It's just 100% wild Rack Pack, and you search it, you answer a few questions, and you're in. And, it's just a community where people can get together, show deer pictures, ask questions, talk about strategies, and get some advice. It's pretty awesome. So we got some new names this week: Seth Cannon, Stephanie White, Ben Van Timmerman, Keaton Boyer, Barrett Lee Miller, Kyle Knutson, it's a K silent, I think, Kenneth Welcher, Matt Gipple, Randy Vessel, Rambo. You probably know Randy. Do you know Rambo over in St. John? You probably know Tristan Vessel.
Yep.
Yeah, that's his dad. And then we got Rusty Steele. All right. Was there a fake name in? There was. Okay, there's a fake name this week. I'm going with Ben Van Tim Marin. How's it? What is this? Rusty Steele. God damn it. Rusty Steele. I should have known that. Sorry, Ben. That's your real name. All right. Let's see here. Let's see. Okay. Oh, hey, here's a big piece of news. Before we get out of here, I should have started this because it says pre-show announcement. I should have started with this. All right. We have over in DeerCast right now, we're about to give away a brand new Tracker 800 side-by-side. We give one away every season, every year, and the giveaway ends December 18th. So as we film this, it's December the 3rd. This will air next week. So you only got a little bit of time left, and the odds are pretty good. So what you got to do, especially in the new version of the app, when you open up the app, you go to let me do it so I know what I'm saying here. Okay, you go over to settings in the bottom right, and there is a thing that says giveaway. Click the giveaway, sign up. It says enter here, and boom. It's free to enter. You don't have to have a paid DeerCast account or anything like that, and you can win a brand new Tracker 800 side-by-side, and they are sweet. So enter to win, and you might have one hell of a Merry Christmas. All right, that's it for the show notes. All right, Mason, before we take off, is there any parting shots that you have? Anything? Where can people find you at? Where can they find Team Radical and your episode with this deer, the YouTube episode? Give us a little bit of info there.
Yeah, so my hunt is being aired on the Team Radical's YouTube channel under the name Stickers. And then my social, mainly use Instagram. It's mwest.33. And I have Team Radical's IG link there as well. So all should be kind of encompassing. That's where I post the most. And that's, where I post work related stuff, and I'm on farms, designing stuff as well. So
perfect. And you're a first Phorm guy, right? So I should have mentioned that early on.
Yep. Big first Phorm guy.
All right. So what's your favorite in the deer stand? What's your favorite go-to drink or snack?
I would say drink would be the Orange Sunrise energy drink.
No brainer.
And then I like the breakfast sausage meat stick. Those are awesome. They're
pretty legit. I don't know. I'm partial to the sharp cheddar.
Those are good too. I do like the barbecue too. That's a runner there.
What about the protein bar?
Yeah. When I'm feeling a little bit more hungry, it definitely helps me be more full than the meat stick. They're a little a little sweet for me, but
that's why I like them. I'm a fat kid.
yeah. I'm definitely a fat kid at heart, but I tend to want milk or something like that if I'm eating them. So then I'm even more of a fat kid.
Yeah. Nice. Well, all right. I appreciate you jumping on with us and telling the story. Like I said, deer of a lifetime. It can happen to one of us. It can happen to any of us listening. You just got to first find the deer. And then once you find the deer, you got to put that game plan together. So, and congratulations. It was awesome. Appreciate you telling the story with us.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
All right. That's it for today's episode. If you're still out grinding, good luck, be safe, and until next time, peace out.
Take land management to the next level with DeerCast's exclusive virtual rain gauges. Pinpoint accuracy and historical data, all powered by industry-leading ag weather services. DeerCast has the tools to keep you ahead of your game. We're adding new videos every week, so make sure to click that subscribe button and check out all of our amazing content. This episode of DoD TV is brought to you by DeerCast Maps, waypoints, weather, virtual rain gauges, and more. Every tool you need to get ahead of your game.